If you guys didn't know already, I'm a huge gamer. Ever since I was young, I've been enthralled by just how games can show us amazing stories in unique worlds. And that stands true even still today. Hell, I just got done recently beating the new God of War and it's incredible. But for me, and I'm assuming many others, I'm not really a fan of games with turn-based combat. Aside from Pokemon and Persona 5 because, well, I like good shit. And since I'm not a fan of turn-based combat, that made me miss out on a lot of popular series growing up like Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest. And even though I still prefer other genres, I try to keep an open mind, but still find myself struggling to play turn-based games. Hell, I just recently beat Hades and Hollow Knight, and I've never been able to play those types of games before. It's just games like Dragon Quest that I really struggled to get through. So I make do by playing games that aren't turn-based like Dragon Quest Builders, which is an amazing game as well and I highly recommend it. And after I finished Builders, I found out there was a Dragon Quest anime that was being adapted, and I knew I had to check it out. After about 3 years when it's finished, because I hate watching long series weekly. And I gotta say, it was pretty damn good. Dragon Quest: The Adventures of Dai is, just as the title says, about the adventures of Dai, a young boy who was separated from his parents at a young age after being cast away at sea, only to wash up on an island full of friendly monsters, and as a result, being raised by those monsters. In any other series, Dai would have ended up a completely different way, but since this series is more of a lighthearted one, he grows up essentially to become a hero. And just for the record, I'm going to butcher a lot of these names. So with that, after meeting some friends and fellow disciples of Avon, Mom, Pop, and Hyunkel, they swear to stop the Dark King at all costs from taking over the world. And that pretty much sums up the story. Now before I get into the characters, I just want to ask, why the hell is this being slept on so much? Like, if you look on my anime list right now, there are around 60,000 people and only 40,000 of those who have watched it. The rest is all planned to watch. And if you don't think that's low, here's Hunter x Hunter's user count for comparison. Look, I get it, it's a newer series with an aesthetic that's more on the kid-friendly side, but man, I don't think I've ever in this era of anime seen a quality adaptation like this been slept on so much. Anyways, that's pretty much all I wanted to rant about. So the major draw to Dragon Quest for me was the world and the characters. The power system would be a factor too, but up until like 50 plus episodes in, it was pretty cut and dry. Plus the names for the spells are just goofy. Like, I'd be embarrassed if I was a mage out here casting something like Kafriz. But that's more of the game's fault than the anime, so I can't really knock it for following the source material. The world though, it was pretty nice. Nothing too out of the ordinary for an action-adventure series, but it gave off the same vibe to me like the original Dragon Ball. That could also be because the artist behind the Dragon Quest series is Akira Toriyama, which is the mangaka for Dragon Ball, but who knows? And although the characters were also pretty standard for a shonen series, I still really enjoyed watching them develop. Seeing Dai's party grow and develop was actually the main thing that kept me interested the whole way through. From Dai accepting his heritage and pushing forward to fight for humanity, even though he might not always be accepted by them, to Pop learning sometimes it's better to stand and fight than run away, to even Hyunkel who learns to forgive and fight against evil. And even though this series is more on the traditional side of shonen by today's standards, still, these characters all have some obstacle they have to overcome to move forward. And although they may be a little one-noted in the fact that Dragon Quest still plays on that power friendship thing like every other series is beaten to death by now, there's a limit to how much that will actually help them. But I am a sucker for the power of friendship.
I have the power of God and anime on my side! Wait,
However, even with it, I still like the theme that even monsters can be good and humans can be just as awful as they are while under the Dark King's influence. And yes, I know, I always bring that up in these videos, but if a show conveys it well enough, I have to point it out. Although it seems like even though they want to show that there isn't one side that is objectively good, it really feels like they're pushing for humans to be the good guys, except for a few instances. Now going back to the characters, I thought they were great except for this one. This one was kind of annoying. I just am not a big fan of the weakest character in a show always being cocky and acting like they're the shit. He and every other character like that just feels really unnecessary to me. But like I said earlier, the development for the other characters like Pop and Hyunkel made me feel more of a connection to them, and learning more about them and their backgrounds reinforced that. And one of the two things I really think this show suffers from is that Dai is just way too overpowered. And once he starts powering up, he doesn't stop and ends up on a level that no one on his side can match. And that kind of sucks because sure, I do love overpowered characters fighting, but to some degree, it makes all the other characters feel like their role is just to hold out until Dai shows up to wipe the floor with them or turn the enemy with the power of friendship. And I love characters like Goku, but I don't think we need another series with a power gap that big between teammates. Before I mention the other cons, I'm going to put a spoiler warning here just in case. Okay? Good. The other thing I disliked and think that Dragon Quest didn't really handle well was the character deaths. It feels like all the people we see that die aside from one person all come back to life. Like Aban, for example, had a meaningful death that set up the whole motivation for Dai and his friends to stop the Dark King. But then like 80 episodes in, you find out he was alive all along, and it just felt cheap and makes the consequence of death kind of go away. And with him, they bring back two other characters that died. It felt like all this was just justified to get the main character to the final fight. And honestly, when you see it all end, it feels unnecessary. Also, the ending for me, I did like it, but I really wish we knew what happened to Dai and if he was really still alive. I also think that since they put a lot of emphasis on certain relationships, that they should have shown the results of those in the last episode. But who knows, maybe there'll be something else in the future for that. Okay, spoilers over. Moving on, and the animation for this is great. Like 90% of the time. I don't know what's up with Toei lately, but their quality for a lot of their adaptations is very inconsistent. Like we have One Piece with drawn out pacing, Dragon Ball Super with the first 60 episodes or so having terrible ass animation, and now Dragon Quest has some issues. But to be fair on their end, I do think Dragon Quest is the most consistent out of the three. The worst I've experienced with Dragon Quest was in the later fights, like episode 80 and on. I noticed some really bad keyframes that were kind of reminiscent of Seven Deadly Sins animation. On top of that, they use a lot of CGI for scenes with a lot of movement or enemies on screen, and it ain't Chainsaw Man CGI. But if you're not really keeping an eye out for that kind of stuff, I doubt you'll notice these issues like I did, except the CGI. Now, I know it sounds like I have a lot of problems, but honestly, it's actually the opposite. I actually really enjoyed this series from start to finish, and even though it has some issues, I think those are easily overlooked as long as you know what you're getting into. I went into this expecting a traditional, lighthearted shonen, and that's exactly what I got. It's an anime that's filled with a lot of charm and heartwarming moments. And even though it's nothing new and doesn't really reinvent the wheel, if you're looking for something that's familiar and is the formula we all know and love, I think you should give Dragon Quest a shot, especially if you're a fan of series like Naruto or Dragon Ball. So with that said, I'm going to give Dragon Quest The Adventures of Dai a whopping 8.5 out of 10. It's got awesome characters that have a lot of development, a power system that has a huge variety even though a lot of the spells sound goofy as hell. Well, the dub's pretty good though, and a setting that is really unique. Sure, the series does have some issues with its animation and the problem of Dai being too OP at times, or lacking the threat of characters dying besides a couple. But even with those, I still found myself engaged and excited to see what came next. But anyways guys, I want to know your opinion. Did you like the Dragon Quest anime, or was it not for you? Let me know down in the comments. And if you enjoyed the video, please consider dropping a like and subscribing, it really helps out the channel. Also, if there are any other anime you want me to cover, let me know down in the comments as well. Lastly guys, I just want to apologize for being really inconsistent lately. I've been having some PC issues and keep having to send it back to get fixed. So that's the main reason my schedule's all messed up, since I have to work around that. Also still recovering from being sick for like a week as well. But I really do appreciate all your guys' support, it really means a lot, and I'm planning a little something for the end of the year, so look out for that. And hopefully from now on I won't have any more computer issues. Anyways, that's all from me. Thanks guys, later.